Hi, I came across a video by Valuetainment, entitled, "Americans Will Be Poor Overnight." One of the guests made some comments that clearly shows how arrogant and ignorant he is, about his own country, the US, China, and what is happening over the past 40 years in China and the world. Unfortunately, Washington is full of people like him. I think it is necessary to rebuke his erroneous views point by point, and show you the truths about the misconceptions in the West regarding China. I don't have the time to produce perfect videos, but my analysis will give you true views about the world and China. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to all videos in my channel by clicking the bell. Let's get to it.
Brazil is a totally corrupt country. They're a broken country. The bulls on Brazil have been wrong the last 20 years. It's like $1 trillion GDP. You could fact check me on it. They're mainly a natural resource hub, and they have a real hard time with their own homegrown industry. And there was like 1.6 trillion. I was about right. It's actually flatlined and gone down in recent years. So the bulls on Brazil have been wrong. And with Lula now becoming president, they're going to become a wholly owned colony of the Chinese Communist Party. Basically, that's what Brazil...
Catastrophic for the nation,
it's
by
terrible.
the way. Yeah.
No, the future of Brazil is put in permanent jeopardy because...
He started out by insulting Brazil, to which many Brazilians returned with angry comments. He didn't realize it has been the US that has been controlling, stuffing up the economies of the South American countries, exploiting the resources. Brazil's abundant resources are exactly what China needs, exactly like Russia and Argentina. China will do very well in collaboration with these countries. Everyone will win.
However, it's a fact that if we stop being the world reserve currency, every single person in America gets significantly poor overnight.
Yes, he is exactly right there.
Despite the fact that we're service-based, we still have a lot of natural resources. We have a manufacturing beast that can still be unleashed if necessary.
I think he is very wrong there. It is wishful thinking to say America is still a manufacturing beast. He does not know what it takes to become the manufacturing superpower that China is today, the skills of the people, their perseverance, creativity. Even more important, the complete supply chain, infrastructure such as transport, port facilities, which no other countries can replicate now. There is no way any other countries can replicate what China has built into an industrial superpower over the past 30 years. Not in the foreseeable future. It is a fact that the US and the West must accept, otherwise they will just continue to go down the wrong path.
What we need is a new regime. You're right, we do think in terms of regime. Hopefully it's President Trump, and we go directly after the CCP. But
this guy is a serious Trump supporter, but he is dead wrong. It was Trump who started the trade war with China, imposing the trade tariffs. The US trade deficit is much, much higher today, and the tariffs are part of the reasons for the high inflation today. The Americans pay those tariffs, not China, as Trump and some people claimed.
With the proper president, the right president, we can crack that alliance in 9 months. These countries, China has a lot of domestic problems.
What would Trump do? You're saying that. So Trump gets, let's just say it's 2024, okay. He wins. What's he doing?
Well, first, he could go back to what we already had, which is you have a peace immediately brokered in eastern Ukraine. Immediately. You go in there and you end this stupid war, you end this proxy war.
Sorry, regarding Ukraine war, the damages to the US people, to Europe, have already been done by the US politicians. It's too late. Energy prices in Europe has gone up by 300%. Resources are cut off, inflations are sky high, and because of that, the industries are moving out of Europe. Where to? Mostly to China. European people are suffering. I am not sure this guy knows about all those.
You then try to create intentional separation between Russia and China and keep them in their own corners.
Separate China and Russia, keep them in their own corners? Sounds so easy and arrogant with him, as if he is still ruling the world. He does not know both China and Russia are totally disillusioned with the US, knowing full well the US is to exploit and rule the rest of the world like slaves. China will not agree to it, neither will Russia.
You go to the Saudis and you say, knock it off. You're going to keep on using the dollar for the petrodollar. You save OPEC, which will increase the dollar's strength as a world reserve currency.
Are you going to threaten Saudi? Don't you know Biden has totally upset Saudi king? Saudi is buying weapons from China much cheaper, more superior, no strings attached like from the US, and no backdoors in the weapons that US can turn the planes and missiles it sold to Saudi into crap metals anytime it likes. Don't you know, when the US sent its carrier to blockade Iran, Iran drove the US carrier out with speed missile boats supplied by China. US military superiority over the rest of the world is over, because of China.
See? And then you have to go after the CCP in like a 15-point targeted plan. You pull their visas from being able to go to Europe, you put targeted sanctions on them. There's again, I'm not exactly saying anything that hasn't been thought through really serious scholars, but we have to have a serious plan to punish the CCP for what they did with the virus, covering it up and lying about it.
It is so funny, this guy actually couldn't think of any more ways to punish China. The fact is US can do nothing to China. It's been 3 to 4 years since the US started waging the trade war, finance war, technology war, military threats on China. They have not hurt China one bit, and China is even stronger, and America's banking and finance systems are at the brink of collapse, the high inflation and interest rate out of control. The last thing the US can sanction China with is shutting China out of SWIFT, stopping China from using US dollar altogether. But the US politicians know that will hurt US much more than China, as the US literally survives on Chinese supplies. China will be too happy to say, okay, pay me with Chinese yuan, and then turn on its digital Chinese yuan system and switch all Chinese trade with the rest of the world in Chinese yuan, speed up the demise of US dollar. One important fact is US military force can do nothing to China anymore. US warships are sailing in South China Sea every day posturing. They just got escorted out of South China Sea by Chinese Navy every time. These are all facts. Empty words cannot help.
Look, China has a lot of domestic problems. They have hundreds of millions of people living in legitimate third world poverty. Despite the appearance that Xi Jinping puts on like he's the most popular leader ever, there's legitimate dissent against the CCP. The CCP is run by a group of mobsters and thugs with no more than 5% of the popular support. And so they got their own ticking time bomb. They have ghost cities. They manipulate their currency. They have bank runs that happen far too often. They suppress a lot of the news there. They're not a free society. They think they can kind of do this Marxist Orwellian digital surveillance state. I actually think that's unsustainable. I think it's going to break eventually. I could be wrong.
Yes, all you said is wrong. China has lifted more than 1 billion Chinese from poverty over the 20 years, and over 90% of Chinese are happy with their government. These facts that anyone could check. Sadly, many people in the US and the West are living in an information bubble created by the politicians. Added to it is the economic and finance bubble that is about to burst.
Where he talks about how the American elites are bought and paid for by the CCP. There's a great expression in Mandarin, and it's roughly translated, little bad talk, big help, which means they might talk a bad game against China, but they're a big act of help. You can look at the cover. He has Elon Musk on there, which I think is a little unfair, but he has Joe Biden, John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi, LeBron James, I think that's Henry Kissinger, and then Bill Gates, all of which who benefit tremendously from the Chinese Communist Party.
And then you see
what he is talking about is how the entrepreneurs are making money from the Chinese market. It is a well-known fact. Bill Gates warned the US government sanctioning China will not work. When Trump started the trade war against China, he had a survey of the business sector. Over 90% objected to the trade war, which Trump ignored it. To Trump, the survey was just for show. The politicians just don't listen.
America helped China become who they are today with relationships over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to interject, but without us giving them favored nation status, without the 1999 World Trade Organization treaty, they are a third world country, period. And we basically said, okay, we're going to re-domicile our manufacturing assets. We're going to close down our ability to make stuff, and we're going to do this massive labor arbitrage where we're going to send all the jobs to you, and we get a bunch of plastic we do not need in return. But why do we make penicillin and vitamin C? 90% of all our vitamin C comes from China. Like, that makes no sense. And so we offshored our critical infrastructure to a country that seemed to be kind of a passive country, and it's now turned into our greatest enemy.
Now we are looking at a popular saying that US helped build China into the industrial superpower today by letting China join WTO. The fact is the US let China join WTO because the US wanted to exploit China's cheap labor and resources. Just like what the US did to Japan and Korea and many other nations, to convert China into a democracy controlled by the US, influence the Chinese to subservient to the US. The US has successfully exploited the Chinese market, the elites makes huge profits. However, the part that didn't work for the US is the US failed to convert China into a democracy that the US can control. It failed to make the Chinese subservient to the US. Moreover, the US suddenly realized Chinese technologies such as 5G, satellite, military, and financial strength and strategies have advanced significantly beyond their expectation and control. The US became panicky, decided to contain China, instead of to prosper together as equal partners. That's why we have the US versus China standoff right now.
What have we gained from that? Just lower prices when you go to Walmart?
I'll tell you what we've gained. Our homes are twice as big as they were in the 1950s, with twice as much garbage that we do not use, and they're half filled. They're twice as empty because we have less kids. So we have piles of plastic we do not use, and factories that are empty, and then in return, we fill our entire communities with fentanyl made by the Chinese Communist Party, pumped through by the Sinaloa drug cartel, and we lose 107,000 people a year to drug overdoses.
Because of cheap supplies from China, the US has been able to live good lives well beyond their means. But this guy is so ridiculous to blame China for the big house he lives in, twice the supplies that they had to discard, even for having less kids, and for the drug problems. Everything is China's fault.
The Chinese Communist Party deal is a bad deal, and the people that defend it, it's indefensible. I mean, what we have as a casualty is we have become more in like an owned and operated colony of the CCP. It's breakable. It's breakable for many reasons because we still have a free society and they don't. The fact we have somewhat of a free society is our great competitive advantage.
He is very wrong. China has never wanted to replace the US. China consistently tells the US international collaboration is not a zero-sum game. Both will prosper working together as equal partners. The US had been doing extremely well supplying China with the chips and software, resources, foodstuffs, etc. But instead the US decided to cut China off of essential supplies such as chips, software such as Android and chip design technologies, to contain and decouple with China, not realizing the US will not be able to replicate China. Give China a few years, China will become self-sufficient, and the US will suffer a lot more than China, which is happening right now. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to all videos in my channel by clicking the bell. Thank you.